We are live.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Founder Hacks, our podcast where we share something we've seen, something we've read and something we've learned that's been an inspiration for ourselves or the founders that we're working with. Let me start by wishing a very ample welcome to Mr. Alex Moore.
Hello. Oh, you didn't use a funny thing today. Normally you do the...
I went with ample welcome.
Ample welcome, okay. Thank you. Hello.
Anthony was going to get a fulsome welcome.
A fulsome
welcome to Mr. Anthony Enright.
Hello Ben, hello Alex.
Hello both. Love a little exercise to extend my vocabulary. It's always good. I think we're going to kick straight off today with something that Alex has seen, an experience you've had with a business you're working with. So, do you want to kick us off, Alex?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot at the moment. We are living in extraordinary times, and I've just seen the power of creative thought and founders' determination to succeed has impressed me, and particularly one of the companies I am connected to, have invested in, I'm on the board of. They've had some very, very challenging times. I'd rather not say who they are, but they just kept on swimming and they just didn't give up, and they've always believed, even at the beginning of lockdown, they're in the hospitality industry, that they would get out of this and they would figure a way out of it. And they just managed, against the odds, to secure some investment, which not only saves the business, but it propels it to the next level. My hat goes off to them because, they just kept going. They just, Steve Jobs had this famous or infamous reality distortion field where he just didn't accept certain things that everybody else told him. And he just pushed it forward. I'm not a huge Steve Jobs fan, by the way, because he's apparently shouted at people and wasn't a very nice person. I don't find him particularly inspiring, but these guys are, and they really did it. And I just thought it was very inspiring. And, my hat goes off to them. And, very uplifting. Very uplifting. I'm going to throw this one open to you two. Anthony, do you want to go first? What's your thoughts on this subject, the power of persistence? Over to you.
Isn't it great to hear a story where, because we know of so many businesses and that we're involved in and others within our sort of community and network that it's a really tough time out there. And sometimes I look back as almost like the entrepreneur's curse of just never giving up. And it can be a curse, but it can also be a huge, huge benefit to just stick with it and know in your gut that you're doing the right thing, and you just keep going regardless of what's around you. And isn't it great to hear the story now of that? Because it's been, we're getting very close to sort of 7 months in the UK of this kind of lockdown and restrictive trading. And that's a long time. It's a long time to go through it. So it's just fantastic to hear such a good news story out of that. But there are certainly, every business that I'm involved in, nobody's given up. Nobody's given up. And I think it's testament to the entrepreneurs out there that you're just not going to give up. You're not going to give up the ghost. You know that this is going to get better. And what can you do to work through it? So just a fantastic story to kick us off with today, I thought.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, tenacity is clearly such an important thing, and I've seen so many people let go, I think, too easily. And then equally, I recognise, and perhaps recognise in myself too, sometimes I can be a little too tenacious and let go and not let go of something when it is the right time to let go. So I think it's an interesting one. I completely believe in the power of persistence and think it's so important for founders. And then we set against that, when it's time to fail quick. Do you know what I mean? So it's another one of these sort of founder contradictions we have to manage, right? Between the power of persistence and clinging on to fail fast, as we discussed on our last podcast. So I think it's interesting. That said, I know in my soul, in my deepest, darkest recesses, I am very persistent. I don't let go. I do cling on. And you know what? You never know what's around the corner. I often think of Finding Nemo, just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. What should we do now? just keep swimming.
And it reminds me of a story as well. I went to a seminar about 7 or 8 years ago, and it was an organisation that used to go around to mills, wood mills, and collect all the offcuts and all the dust that comes from wood mills. And it was a family-run business. It was hundreds of years old, and they were losing money hand over fist. But they just kept going. They kept going. They were about to offload the business until one of the family members said, no, let's get ourselves in the best position possible to see if we can sell the business, even though we're making losses. And just that persistence kept them going. They put a plan in place, and they had this one person driving it the whole time. And you know what? They were making huge losses, but they sold the business for something like £8 million, right, on a loss-making business, simply because they kept going, but somebody saw the value in the contracts that they had with all these mills. They wanted to sell them something else. So just by that continual persistence, but also that one person leading it, going, no, we're not just going to give up. We are going to go and look for a buyer. We are going to see where there's value in our business. Yeah, Ben, you've got something similar.
Yeah. Actually, it makes me thoughtful, because maybe there's something here which is about that combination, because that story, and indeed Alex's story, is one of persistence, but there's something else as well, which is having the humility to spot the opportunity when it arrives. And maybe that's the difference, because I've seen people get stuck and they look like they're persistent. They're not persistent. They're just stuck. They're just doing the same thing over and over again and not getting anywhere. What I think connects these stories is that it's about being persistent so that you have the opportunity to do something different, and so that you reach that point of opportunity. So maybe there's something in that is unique for founders, is yes, we must be persistent, and we must be very open-minded to those opportunities when they arrive. So Alex, sum that up. Go.
God, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting one. I think persistence alone isn't necessarily going to get you there. But this wonderful thing that's happened this week to this fantastic business is largely down to persistence. But for me, I've always felt that as a founder, it's that balance of realism and optimism. And, ultimately, you've got to pay the bills. You've got to pay your staff's bills, your staff's salaries. And, that's a huge obligation, because, your colleagues, they have families. And to be this fantastic founder and, I'd never give up, I'll believe, still at the end of the day, people have to believe in you, and you've got to make sure they get paid at the end of the month. So I think power of persistence for me, without being reckless and without being disrespectful of the obligations and the people who are relying on you to make the right decisions. So on that note, shall we move on to red, people? I believe that's you, Mr. Enright.
It is, yeah. So something that comes up from time to time is how do you pick the right members of staff, or how do you pick and something for entrepreneurs, especially as you're looking to open new businesses and progress and grow portfolios, is how do you select a business partner? Incredibly difficult decision to make, right? We hear lots and lots of stories about, failed partnerships and failed relationships. And actually, I have to say, it's not my personal trainer, for those that know me. It's not my personal trainer. But there's a personal trainer called Gav Gillibrand who does his weekly or fortnightly newsletter. And he put something in there that we all kind of resonated with and thought was just so simplistic but so funny, and potentially a way forward. So his advice is, as you're selecting somebody to work with, is ask yourself 2 questions, okay? The first question is, would you go out and have 2 beers with that person? Would you go and have 2 beers with them and enjoy and look forward to that event? And the second question is, would you allow them to look after your puppy?
I love that.
So would you go and have 2 beers, and would you allow them to look after your puppy? And what's really interesting as you go through it is, and you're going to think about people now as you hear this, and you're going to think, no, I don't want to have 2 beers with that person, and no, I wouldn't let them look after my puppy. And some people are, I would have 2 beers with them, but there's no way that I'd let them look after my puppy. And obviously there's other people that are, the other way round. Or there's, yes, I would have 2 beers with them, and yes, I would let them look after my puppy. And maybe that's the simple recipe to selecting members of staff and or business partners. Alex, what were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it just made me chuckle, and I thought, this is why maybe it was a good one to talk about on our podcast. It's very light-hearted, but there is some wisdom inside this, and I think, when we put together our business, Atomics, the three of us, we talked about the type of clients we wanted, and the type of people we wanted to work with, and then we were like people that we like who make us laugh. Because ultimately you end up spending a lot of time with people, and they've got to make, they can't just be somebody you would trust to look after a puppy. They need to be both. You need to be able to go out and have a beer with them, and you need to trust them with, looking after your puppy. So, yeah, couldn't disagree with the logic. And I just thought, quite light and fluffy, but with some real wisdom in it. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, sometimes these things, they sort of feel like a bit of a joke, a bit of a gag, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There is wisdom in it, because we're talking about trust, and we're talking about fun, and that human connection that you have with someone. I love the fact it's 2 beers.
Yeah,
it's not a beer, it's 2 beers,
yeah.
Which is really interesting, right? Because that's different. 2 beers. Okay, so this isn't just this is actually, you're going to get into some stuff. You're going to have a chat, and is that going to work? And there are so many of these different methodologies, right, in terms of understanding people. And I guess part of the founder's responsibility, one of the things that falls to a founder often, is to be the one picking the team. And it's hard. It's difficult to pick the team. And actually, as much as I hate to say it, there's these incredibly complicated, difficult, multiple-stepped processes we can put in place, or we can just ask ourselves, would I have 2 beers and could they look after my puppy? And you know what? I wonder if the output is probably going to be quite similar. It's a great way to reflect, to look in the mirror and make that assessment. So, I just think it hits on a number of points, doesn't it, that are very interesting.
I guess the hard one for me is, how would you, I'll throw this one out to you guys, how would you figure that out if you meet someone, so in an interview or something, how would you figure, would I like to have beers with this person? Would I let them look after my puppy? What questions would you ask in an interview to figure that out?
Perhaps that's what I like about it, though, because I think it takes you out of that. It takes you into a more intuitive place, I think this is the thing. We try to science everything completely, and I'm a great believer in that, as you know, and then yet sometimes when it comes to the human stuff, it's that intuitive decision. I mean, if you're spending a couple of hours with someone, you pretty much, you'll have that gut sense of, actually, would I have a couple of beers with them? Would I let them? And maybe that's the point of this, is that it connects you with that intuitive side, which sometimes we ignore because we try to science everything.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. What do you reckon, Andy?
Well, me and my background, I'm a huge one for process when it comes to hiring people, right? Get the process right. Take time to get the process right for recruiting people, and you won't regret it later on. But what I love about this is the simplicity about, because for me, you've always, it's not just can somebody do the job, but do they live the values of our business? Are they going to come in and live the values of our business? And that and those 2 questions just live to what we've already said about having fun and can you trust them? And it reminds me of the company that the very final stage, they would go to the pub on a Friday afternoon, and any potential new recruit that they were about to offer, they brought them to the pub with them. And it was a test, and the person most of the time didn't know it was a test. And the test was to see how they interacted with the team, how they got on with the team, but also what they were always done is the CEO would give them the company credit card and go, can you go to the bar, please? And can you order everybody a drink? And it was just that, to see how they interacted, how they took the order, how they treated the bar staff, and how they dealt with that whole process, because they learned so much from interaction, teamwork, and those sorts of things. So I love playing with these processes. And I love to make it fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember a famous story I once heard. It was famous in my little world, where the final stage of interview was they asked every receptionist, every office junior who'd met them from reception and made them a cup of coffee for their feedback. And I thought that was very clever, because for this business, it was really important how you chose to treat somebody who was in a position of looking after you or serving you was vitally important. And if you'd been a bit of unpleasant character.
We nearly said a swear word.
I nearly said a swear, but I didn't. Well, we're going to keep our rating on iTunes. I'm determined. That would be a deal breaker if you were a person who didn't know yourself well enough. They were actually selecting coaches, but it was a fantastic way to do it, I thought.
I love that, and I think our sort of takeaways from this are that have fun with the process, right? Have fun with it, and make sure that you're not taking the fun out of your business when you're looking to hire people, right? We want to have fun. We spend so much time working together. Somebody said to me a long time ago, you don't have to be grave to be serious. Some businesses are going through a lot of troubles at the moment, but if you keep the smile on your face, keep everybody laughing and working through the issues that they've got, it's so much more enjoyable. So on that note, we're moving on to our learned, and Ben, that's over to you.
I think it is yet again. I'm getting the abstract, but listen, I'm particularly pleased with this one because this actually came out of a lovely piece of feedback we got. If you remember, guys, a couple of weeks ago, I shared a little metaphor around navigating a business through tough times, and I used the metaphor of a captain on the bridge of a ship navigating through difficult seas. And what does a captain do? They stand on the bridge, they manage second by second, they scan the horizon, and they look for every opportunity to crest the next wave and take that ship through the storm. And one of our listeners, a dear friend, Mr. James Birchall, who I know you guys know very well as well, he actually gave us some feedback, and he said, he liked the metaphor very much and really got it. But it made him think. That actually, of course, you don't learn to be a great sailor on calm seas.
Ooh.
Learning is when you survive the storms. So actually, what we're currently going through right now, the incredible challenges that our founders are facing across all sorts of businesses, maybe guys, what we're doing right now, what we're seeing right now, is we're going to shape the greatest generation of entrepreneurs in decades globally through what's going on right now. And I thought that was a rather beautiful thing, a way to look at this, going, I know things are so hard and so difficult for so many people right now. Think of the learning, think of the shaping that's going to come from that. So I guess the question for you guys is, has that been your experience? Have you learned your strongest lessons when you've not been on the calm seas, but when you've survived the storms? So Anthony, do you want to kick us off, mate?
And I think the answer to that is, of course, yes, but it's whether you realise that or not at the time. Especially, when you've been around for a while and you've been running businesses for, like the three of us have, for probably, around 20 years each. When you first go through that first issue or that first recession or whatever, it's so hard, it's so difficult, it's stressful, and you don't realise it. You don't realise it at the time. But it's only when you become more experienced and you have more hurdles and more issues and potentially more downturns. Never have any of us in our lifetimes experience a pandemic. But by looking at the experiences of the global financial recession in 08, 09, 010, 11, 012 for some, and also certainly in the sectors that I was involved in the early noughties, those recessions, incredibly difficult times to trade through, incredibly long spanning periods of pain. But boy, oh boy, does it stand you in good stead now when you're going through that pandemic. So if you're in that situation where you're listening and you are in that pain, I would suggest, and you haven't experienced a downturn or haven't experienced a recession or something as huge as this, talk to people who have. Maybe bring somebody along. There's a lot of people willing to give their time for free at the moment. If it's an hour here, an hour there, I know certainly we would offer that time ourselves to just share the experience over what it's like to working through it and how and why it will stand to you and how you can come through the other side. So incredibly powerful metaphor. So thank you, Mr. Birchall. Alex, what were your musings on this?
Yeah, I think those dark times, or they can't see it at the time. They can be extremely helpful and can help in the future to get past similar when things go south again. And I think, oh yeah, I remember that. My personal low point, I've told you both about this, I was living in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and I had a digital marketing business, and the Asian crisis hit. And we just completely run out of money, and I didn't have any money for food. So I was living on mustard sandwiches. And, I had a horrible white bread in the fridge and just this horrible mustard and not even any butter. And I was just eating that for several days at a time. And I've often think about my mustard sandwiches, and a lot of the people who are nearest and closest to me, they know about my mustard sandwiches. And I'm proud of that. And I do think about my mustard sandwiches a lot. And I think it gets me through days like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm not eating mustard sandwiches. I'm doing all right. Nothing else matters. Eating mustard sandwiches is pretty bad. I always remember Vinnie Jones, the ex Chelsea footballer, and he was a tough old dude. And he became a Hollywood actor, right? And they said, "Is it hard being an actor?" And he went, "No." He goes, "Being a hod carrier. No, that's hard. He used to be a hod carrier." And I think, remembering the hard times, remembering where you come from, and just not getting too full of yourself. And when other things go wrong for you in life later, you're like, "Is that hard?" Nah, being a hod carrier, that's hard. That's hard. So that's what I wanted to throw in. And
I love
thanks,
that,
James.
Is that going to be the title of your book? Mustard sandwiches. I know you've got another title in mind, but
that's
mustard
going to be a
sandwiches.
cooking book, actually, to 101 mustard sandwich recipes, because my wife's quite good at publishing cookbooks. I think my one on mustard sandwiches could be big, could be huge.
Could be absolutely huge. Wow, very good. I mean, I loved Anthony's point there as well, actually, that because it reminds me, of course, our captain on the bridge isn't alone, doesn't need to be alone. There is a crew there as well. And perhaps the other part we could take as a learn from this is, when you are in tough times, that's the time that you need that support and those people around you. Maybe someone to share the mustard sandwich and share the moment.
It reminds me, Ben, when you say that, about my own experience the first time it happened, and we were losing a fair bit of money. This was in the early noughties with the .com crash, and I kept it all to myself. I didn't share it with anybody in the team, didn't share it with anybody outside, because I felt that it was my burden to carry. But the moment that things started to change, as soon as I shared it with my team and explained the trouble we were in and the issues that we had, I was blown away by their reaction, because I actually thought they were all gonna just up and leave and go somewhere else, but they didn't. And they stuck by us. We put a plan in place. It was the first real time of putting a plan in place, a roadmap, and it stood to us for so many years with that core team who came together to work through those losses, and we came out way stronger.
I think I share that. If I reflect on my darkest times, they've always been lonely times, and whether professionally, not necessarily personally, I've always had a great family that supported me, but certainly in professional terms, that those moments of loneliness where you sort of go, "Oh my God, I'm just on my own with this now," and that's been a part of it. Gentlemen, thank you. Interesting where we've taken today's points, I think. Simple metaphors perhaps, but with some really interesting learning in them. So how do we wrap that up? We are at time. I guess I would say, can we hold on? Can we have the persistence to get to the next opportunity, but keeping an open mind to make sure that we see it when it's there? Can we surround ourselves with people that we would have 2 beers with, not just 1, but 2, and will we trust them to look after our puppy? And are those the people that we want to be stand with us on the bridge as we navigate the storms, come through those tough times, come out of them stronger, having learned and grown from those experiences? Perhaps that's how we could summarise and wrap that up. So As ever, thank you both for a phenomenal Founder Hacks. I've learned something new, as I always do, and I hope our listeners have too. Don't forget, if you do hear something in our podcast that resonates for you, please do let us know. As James did, you may get a name check for what that's worth, and we may well share your learnings alongside those of our own and the founders that we're working with. So it remains to say an enormous thank you, as always, to Anthony Enright.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Alex.
And an equally generous thank you to Mr. Alex Moore.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for listening.
This has been Founder Hacks. I've been Ben Thomas. We are Atomics. Thank you very much indeed for listening.